Shalom, everyone. This is Bobby G, aka Bobby Bookworm, back again with another Saturday spiel. For those who have not been here before, my Saturday spiel is a weekly thing that I do as far as going through the good book and the three passages or four sometimes. For those who don't know, I'm a Messianic Jew or Jewish Christian, depending on who you talk to. And I come here about every week, as often as I am able, Lord willing, to give scriptures every week on the calendar and what they mean. This week is Parashat Beha'alotcha, which means in your making go up, or as you go up. The passages for this week are Numbers chapter 8, verse 1 to chapter 12, verse 15. Zechariah chapter 2 verse 14 to chapter 4 verse 7, Matthew chapter 14 verses 14 through 21, and Revelation chapter 11 verses 1 through 19. Now, the different passages that we have for this week, there's a few things out here to be noted. In the case of the book of Numbers, we have here different rituals, different movements and stuff. In the case of Numbers, you have the Lord telling everybody we have the dedication of the Levites. We have the second month Passover, which is also known as Pesach Sheni, which is if you could not observe Passover on the 14th of Nisan, which is the month that it's usually traditionally to be observed and observed the full week, then you are able to do it the following month, which is on Pesach Sheni, or the second month after Passover originally happens, if you are not genuinely able to do so the first time. There is that catch. You also have the cloud as a guide and the fire by night. You have silver trumpets for the assembly. You have the journey from Mount Sinai. You have the 70 elders who end up sharing the burden and the prophecy that goes on, including the two elders who did not show up, who were not among the 70, but they still prophesied anyway. You have quail from the sea providing meat because people are complaining against Moses. And you have Miriam and Aaron speaking against Moses, his two siblings, his older brother and older sister. And eventually what happens is she gets struck with leprosy. And then she has to get out of the camp for 1 week. Why? Because she spoke up and started being on that rah-rah talk, as it were. And it's not that you shouldn't speak up with regards to the Lord, but you have to know the time and the place. And sometimes that can get you into trouble. In the book of Zechariah, we read about the branch that is eventually going to come up, but we also read about the high priest Joshua, and we have the adversary, also known as the enemy, trying to speak against him, and then the angels speak on God's behalf and say, "The Lord rebuke you, Satan," or "The Lord rebuke you, adversary." And then Joshua the high priest, or the Kohen Gadol, as it's known in Hebrew, isn't wearing the best gear, shall we say, and so he gets that taken from him, and then he gets fresh gear, if you will, put on him so that he can do the proper duties before Adonai, and he is the one that God has anointed to be the one to watch over the people. Now, what we also have is, in the case of Matthew chapter 14, we have the feeding of the 5,000, and this is after Yeshua, Jesus, is doing a lot of healing and a lot of casting out demons and so on and so forth. And just like the children of Israel, or Bnei Israel, got fed quail in the wilderness after they kind of complained, you have the feeding of the 5,000 men, besides women and children, by the way. You should, if you read that passage more closely, it doesn't just say 5,000 total, it says 5,000 men, including women and children, not counting women and children. So there was probably a lot more than 5,000 there, by the way. Important point when you read that passage. And then in the book of Revelation, we see two woes that are passing. You have a first woe, a second woe, and a third woe, so to speak. And you have a seventh angel who sounds forth, and there's an earthquake, and then you have the two witnesses who God gives power over, who are the two lampstands or the two trees before God. And these are witnesses that are able to shut up the heavens for drought. These are witnesses that are able to cause all manner of plague and so on and so forth. And if anyone tries to harm them, they get torched. Literally, fire comes out of the mouth of these two witnesses, and the people who try to harm them or do wrong to them get torched. Then eventually they get killed for 3.5 days. Then they're risen from the dead by the Spirit of God, and then they're brought up to heaven, and then great fear comes upon many people. Now, what does this have to do with today's passage? Well, the common thing to do with all the passages, as is tradition in the Messianic tradition and even in the traditional synagogue tradition, is you try to find where are the crossovers? Where are the things that cross over? Well, we see God providing in the midst of challenging times in all three cases, or in all four cases if you count both Matthew and Revelation. And the point is this. The point is that God does not just provide for us when times are well, and not only should we thank God when times are well, we should, but let us also thank God for providing and protecting us even when times are hard. Because that's the key thing here, is that God provided for the people in both Numbers and in Matthew, as well as Zechariah, when times were hard. Because Zechariah was a prophet who came after the exile, who prophesied to restore things when Israel was not an independent country. It was under the control of the Persians. When Bnei Israel was in the desert, they were provided for. When the people were out in a deserted place, quote unquote, in the book of Matthew, when Jesus fed the 5,000, same thing. And when the book of Revelation, when we know times are going to be hard during the tribulation, there is going to be provision from God. So remember, in all of these passages and all of what's going on right now, because we see it going on with these hard times in the world. I know there's a lot coming down the pipe. I know there's a lot of tough times. And yet I say to encourage all of you who are watching this, God does not just provide apart from our hard times. God does not just protect apart from the hard times, but in spite of them. In spite of how hard times are, if you would but trust God, if you would but trust in Yeshua the Messiah, He will protect and provide in spite of these hard times. Remember this, and remember to acknowledge God and give thanks to God when you are provided for. My name is Bobby G, aka Bobby Bookworm. This is my Saturday spiel. Lord willing, I'll see y'all next week. Shalom.